Shabbat Shalom. So we are standing in the shadow of Tisha B'Av, which we will commemorate tonight at 9 p.m. and tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. But we have to understand what it is we are commemorating. Tisha B'Av commemorates the great disasters of antiquity all the way through the Middle Ages and into the modern world. The only great disaster of our people that it doesn't quite cover is Yom HaShoah. But most of the rest of our disasters, whether it be the bad report of the spies, whether it be the shattering of the tablets, whether it be the destruction of the first temple, the second temple, the fall of Beitar during the time of the Bar Kokhba revolt, whether it be the beginning of the Crusades or the expulsion from Spain, or even the beginning of World War I, which of course led to the Shoah in its own way, they all happened on Tisha B'Av. Now, one lesson we can take from all of this is we've got a very dark history. Another lesson we can take from this is, man, we have survived some of the most horrible things that could possibly happen to a people, and we're still here. And that is pretty amazing. But we have to understand that there were some unique circumstances in the past that allowed for the survival of the Jewish people. And the most important circumstance was it wasn't universal. That is to say, despite the incredible tragedies that our people faced, none of the disasters were aimed at all of the Jewish people simultaneously. We have never actually been all imperiled at the exact same time from any of the major universal disasters. Go back to the destruction of the Second Temple, beginning the cascade that would lead to the diaspora, as we call it. We may think of it as leading to us being spread around the world, but at the time of the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 by the Romans, there was good evidence that nearly a majority of Jews already lived outside the land of Israel. We had huge groups that were living in Egypt. There were many that had never returned from the Babylonian territories following the earlier destruction in 586. There were Jews throughout Anatolia, what we would now call Turkey, in Greece, and even in Italy itself. So when the destruction of 70 happened, and then when Bar Kokhba happened in 134 through 136 a little bit later on, yes, it was horrific. The casualties were incredible. The disruption to our religious, spiritual, and physical lives was immense, but not for all of us all at the same time. There were Jews elsewhere that were able to mourn, to weep, to help the Jews that were in distress, and most importantly, provide refuge. So if somebody was able to escape the Roman destruction, they could flee to Egypt, they could flee to Turkey, they could flee to Babylon. And indeed, this is well documented throughout our own texts and other history. And then when the Crusades happened and the Jews of Europe were being hurt, well, they were able to find succor and escape into the Sephardic world or into other parts of the Mediterranean. And then when it was the Sephardic world's turn, when the Inquisition took place, well, the Jews of the Sephardic world were able to flee into other parts of Europe, other parts of the Middle East, and eventually even to the North and South America. There were places to go. This is before passport control. This is before you had customs and immigration standing at the shore. You got on a boat, you got off, you were in a new country, great. Every country wanted more people because more people meant more productivity. It was a pretty simple equation in the ancient world and all the way up into the modern world. One of the things that made the Shoah the great tragedy that it was not just the bloodthirsty ideas of the Nazis, but it was the fact that we had begun to enter a passport world, that Jews were not able to flee, that they tried in vast numbers to flee, and by and large were unable to escape both Germany as well as Eastern Europe, where they were being rounded up. Even prior to the Nazis fully implementing their grand design, we were trapped by these new procedures. But even as that took place, Jews who lived in England and Jews who lived in North and South America and most of the Jews who lived in the Middle East, well, they were never directly impacted. And so they were there to provide support to the refugees after the war, to give them new places to live, to give funding for their resettlement, especially in the land of Israel, to ensure that there would be continuation. Well, today, I'm scared. Because today we're actually sitting in a very unique situation in Jewish history. 90% of Jews live in two places in the world. 90%. We've got our eggs in two baskets. And those two places are Israel and the United States. Now, Israel's existential threats, I should hope we are all well aware of. I mean, if you are not aware of them, then I don't know, somehow you've been both blind, deaf, and dumb. You haven't come to services and listened to any of our discussions of this. You haven't opened up a newspaper or the digital equivalent in years. Israel's threats are real. We are well aware of them. We know that Israel lives on the edge of disaster. If you weren't sure of that, October 7th should have driven that theme home. If you weren't sure of that, despite Israel's ability to protect itself quite well, the ballistic missiles out of Iran should have driven home that Israel is vulnerable. It's not the Roman Empire level of vulnerability, but given that about half of the Jewish people in the world live in Israel, we must feel keenly the existential danger that comes from our people being there. But I can hear you in the back of your mind going, okay, Rabbi, but that's half. But you just described to me a whole cycle of history over thousands of years where Jews in one place might be threatened, but then they could move to another or find help from Jews who lived elsewhere that were not under threat. Well, I've got news for you. The Jews in the second Jewish population center are also under threat. We just don't seem to care or know it. Right here in the United States, we are facing the greatest threat that we have ever known, and most Jews are completely oblivious or willfully ignorant of the problem. What's the problem? What's the problem? The problem is a theological, political movement known as Christian nationalism, sometimes known as dominionism, which is gaining ground in this country. Now, I have to be very clear, because sometimes when people hear the word Christian nationalism, they immediately divide it into its two constituent parts and think, what's wrong with being Christian and what's wrong with being patriotic? And the answer to those questions is there is nothing wrong with being Christian, and there is nothing wrong with being patriotic. We've got an American flag in this room for a reason. Patriotism, a love of the United States, a defense of its ideals, its values, and its people is part of what makes a person a good citizen. That's not nationalism. And Christianity, even those forms that can sometimes be annoying to us, the knocking on the door or the other types of invasiveness that we have felt over the decades in this country, even that is perfectly fine. We believe that they have a right to pursue the path towards God that they wish, and if it occasionally causes us some minor annoyances in our private life, well, that's okay. That's part of what it comes from, living among other people. Christian nationalism, as a compound word, is neither of those things. It is not patriotism, nor does it reflect actual Christian values, nor does it speak for the majority of Christians. And yet it endangers us like nothing we have ever faced in this country. Because in this country, since the moment we set foot, there were basic understandings. Yes, we were second class when we first got here. We didn't always have full ability to participate in public life. There were limits on where we could live, limits on our enrollment in universities and other institutions. There was often a glass ceiling in many corporations, and there was overt segregation and racism. There were many places in this state, as well as much of the South, where if you were looking for a hotel to stay, you and those that were of color would have been told, keep moving. This isn't for you. But Christian nationalism takes these ideas of the past and says the fact that we have made progress in overcoming the discrimination, the bigotry, the hatred, is what has led to America's degradation. That America is strongest when it is most Christian. That a purity of Christian law will lead America to its greatness. And in their fake nostalgia, they believe it always has. This was a country founded by Christians for Christians. Nothing could be further from the truth. Yes, many of the people who came here in the early days of colonialism were Christian. Very few of them were trying to found a nation based upon the laws of Christianity as they saw them. Some of the communities, yes. Pilgrims, we can point to them. The Puritans, absolutely. And those were lunatic fringe that we cannot hold up as being the core ideal. It was not the Pilgrims and the Puritans that led to the American Revolution. It was not the Puritans and the Pilgrims that wrote the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution. And it has not been them that have fought in the armies to defend the freedom of this country, both from foreign attackers as well as during our Civil War from domestic threats. It was the rest of us who, to varying degrees, may or may not have had full freedoms and liberties, but recognized the potential, the promise of this country as being something worth fighting for, struggling to protect, because we knew that here, eventually we would reach the fullest expression of human liberty, of human respect, and of human thriving. And we have gotten very close. In our legal systems, we have systematically removed the impediments that had been in place in the past. Colleges can't tell you you're not allowed to come here because you're Jewish, and we're full up of Jews. Neighborhoods can't tell you you're not allowed to live here because you're a Jew. Your boss can't tell you you can't get a promotion because you're not a Jew. And yet, each one of those points is under attack. Right now. Right now. There is already a move afoot to fund private religious institutions at the expense of our public ones. How long will public institutions, which are beholden to federal laws regarding discrimination, going to endure when money has been siphoned from them to give to sectarian universities, sectarian high schools, sectarian elementary schools? How long will we be able to send our kids to elite institutions, and those elite institutions have been captured by Christian nationalists, who will ask, not that you respect the traditions and history of those universities as being some religious founding, but will demand that you will pledge allegiance to their God. You may be thinking, oh, but if we're getting money from the government for all these institutions, why can't we have Jewish schools? Indeed, some of my co-religionists, the people who are also Jewish, have shamefully advocated for exactly this. As long as we get our share of the pie, it'll all be fine. Well, I got news for you. The share of the pie that we're going to get is so small it won't even be crust. It won't even be crumbs. It'll be dust. Because there aren't many of us. And if you think that the capture of those elite institutions, the places where the greatest research is being done, where the greatest doctors are being trained, where the new generation of educators are being given their skills to go back into the schools, if you think they are going to find room for the graduates of the piddling little Jewish institutions, you are sadly mistaken. Well, but that surely doesn't affect where we're going to live. I mean, yes, it might be hard to get a good job because we didn't get the good education, but there are programs right now underfoot to rewrite discrimination laws for housing. As I speak, there is a group in Arkansas which has thousands of members and tens of thousands nationally who are seeking to duplicate what they are doing, that are retaking the land. They are setting up white Christian enclaves as exclusion zones. They are trying to say this is a private organization and nothing to do with housing, and therefore it doesn't fall afoul of the federal legislation regarding discrimination. And the Attorney General of Arkansas just yesterday said, you know, maybe they've got a point. Maybe it's fine. It's like kind of just a big company, and if people happen to be living there as well as investing in the overall organization, well, that's not a housing first program. So therefore, if they want to say you must be white and you must be this version of Christian in order to live on this land, surely that's not discrimination. That's just a secondary effect. The same way that a synagogue gets to decide whether or not we hire somebody that's Jewish to be the rabbi, they can decide whether they want to let somebody who's only Christian be a part of their organization. Do you not see the danger? Do you not understand how easy it is if that is the low bar that we are setting for it's not discriminatory, for your homeowners associations to vote, to also decide that they will incorporate themselves as a larger business, as a company, maybe a lawn care company. They seem fixated on that. And occasionally, yes, we also have housing available. But as that's not our primary concern, only white Christians will be allowed in those houses. Do you not see the danger that is there? Well, maybe I have to live in a Jewish neighborhood. It's not so bad. We'll be near the synagogue. You can walk. You can all come more often. I can go knocking on your door each morning to tell you to get out over here for Shabbos. It's not so bad. But what about your workplace? Well, in the federal government, we just had an executive order say that, those old rules about not proselytizing in your place of work? Yeah, that impinges upon the freedom of religion of devout people. Because some people's religion tell them they have to proselytize. They have to tell other people that they are damned to hell if they don't go to their church. And we don't want to take away from their religious freedom. So as long as it's not onerous, then they are absolutely allowed to do so. During break, you can now expect your federal boss to come up to you and say, hey, Joshua, I'd love for you to come to my church because, if you don't come to my church, you're damned to hell. All of this while I'm eating my nice little kosher sandwich. Oh, and by the way, after your break, could you come into my office? We're going to be doing your yearly review. Do you see a problem? Do you see the danger? This is already happening. This is not what will happen. This is happening. And yet we sit here and we think it's all fine. It's fine. Look, we have more freedoms than we've ever had. Yes, but we are coasting on the inertia of those who worked like dogs to grant us this. And there are people out there working like dogs to take it away. And just because we haven't felt it enough individually, we are not waking up to the danger. We are not waking up to the threat. Because the Christian nationalists, they're not shy. They tell you exactly what they want. They want a country that is 100% Christian of their variety and 100% white. And I've got news for you. We don't meet either of those criteria, at least not by their definition. So, if America is blessed because of the Christian nature of its country and its adherence to Christian law, what do you think they want to happen to the Jews who happen to live here? Simple. 2 options. 1, get out. They want us to self-deport, to leave, that we should go find somewhere else to ruin, to desecrate with our presence, because clearly God only blesses them, therefore we are a poison to the land. And this is all rhetoric taken straight out of their texts. Well, there's a problem with that. 1, we are not living in pre-passport days. We can't just get on a boat in Lisbon and end up in Holland and resettle there like our ancestors from the Inquisition. We can't simply flee in front of the Roman legions and go all the way to Babylon and live there like our ancestors did. Where do you think you could go? Where? You imagine yourself as somehow, when things get bad enough, will sell our house in the neighborhood we're no longer allowed to live in after having been kicked out of my job or at least passed over for promotion because I didn't convert for a number of years. Now I'll take what's left of myself, my assets, my families, my broken life, and we're going to find some other country that's willing to take in millions of Jews who have all been put through this? You think there's another country out there with an open border policy, just waiting for millions of Jews to come and show up? Well, sure, there's one, kind of. Israel's been not very welcoming to people who would like to immigrate lately. I'm speaking from personal experience of people who try to make aliyah. But let's imagine that they actually change their politics and allow, under duress, this mass American migration. Great. So now 90% of the Jews in the world live in a place that we already know is also under existential threat. Great solution. Perfect. That's just what's got us through the last 2,000 years. Rather than having all of our Jews in 2 baskets, we'll have them all in 1 basket. Well, what's the alternative? Well, maybe Israel can't absorb 5 million American Jews, which, let's be honest, it cannot absorb in a drop of a hat, in the instant. Okay, so we stay. Well, say goodbye to your citizenship. That is the ultimate goal for those who stay. Convert or lose your citizenship. Become Christian of the particular variety that's in power, or you are no longer a full American citizen. You do not have rights. You are living here as a dhimmi, as a member used to live within the Muslim world when we were secondary citizens with no rights, no privileges, and no protections. You can work at second-class jobs. You can live where we tell you can live, but you cannot vote. Don't expect the police to afford you the same respect and rights they give to Christians. You can have jobs, but not most of them. We're not going to let you poison our kids as teachers. We're not going to let you tamper with our people as doctors. Of course not. Why would God bless you in dealing with us? No, but, you can be menial laborers, maybe. That would be suitable for your station. And punishment, of course, for having killed Jesus. Indeed, there are members of Congress that have fought hard to ensure that we can still be slandered as Christ killers, and that cannot be considered anti-Semitic. This is the future that we are facing. Well, personally, I don't like either of those options. I don't think having 5 million Americans move to Israel is reasonable or likely. And I don't think sitting around waiting for our citizenship to eventually be stripped and our rights and privileges yanked away is very desirable either. So, we have to take the third option. We have to actually work to stop it. Because unlike our ancestors in almost every time and place, we have, at the moment, rights. At the moment, we have resources. At the moment, we have what power we have. And we can work to try and prevent this from happening, but only if we actually see it as being a problem. If we think, but many of the Christian nationalists are such great supporters of Israel, so we don't want to upset them. So what if they want to put prayer in school? We'll tell our kids to ignore it. So what if they want to proselytize to us in our workplace? We'll just ignore it. So it's not going to be so bad. It's a small price to pay for continuing to have support of Israel when she is under such threat. I love Israel and will support her with all my heart, but not sacrificing every member of the Jewish world that lives in the U.S. We do not trade one child for another. We cannot save Israel at the expense of ourselves. That is not a fair trade. And ultimately, we are misunderstanding why they want to save Israel. Not just the apocalyptic ideas that once Israel is full of Jews, that there'll be the final war of Armageddon and then Jesus will return, although many of them do have that very much in mind. But no, many of them see Israel as being the perfect example, in their flawed understanding of its reality, of being a Jewish nationalistic state. There should be a country for Jews, and there should be a country for Christians. America will be the one for Christians, and Israel will be the one for Jews. So they support Israel because they consider it, wrongly, a template for what they wish to accomplish here. That is not support that we want and not support that we need. If we cannot convince others in this country that Israel is an ally in heart and soul because of shared values, because of shared strategic interests, shared economic interests, and shared history, then how dare we try to sell the support of Israel because it should be the ideal that America will copy at the expense of its own Jews. So we're going to upset some people when we say no. We're going to make some people disappointed when we say get out of the classroom with your Bible. We're going to make some people annoyed when we say no. I will sue you into the ground if you bother me at work and tell me that I must join your church to get promoted. And you cannot have your whites-only enclaves. And you cannot discriminate against me because I'm a Jew. And you can't discriminate against a Muslim because they're a Muslim. And you can't discriminate against a Catholic because they are Catholic. Or somebody that is gay because they are gay, or somebody that is black because they are black. No. Because if you can discriminate against any one of those groups, then you can discriminate against any of us. If you think that racism against some is okay, then you are permitting racism against all. If you think bigotry is allowable against the truly undesirable, you will be labeled the truly undesirable before long. Indeed, you already are if you didn't know it. Every conspiracy theory that has dominated our media over the last 20 years, ultimately, if you follow the threads far enough, lands back in the lap of the Jews. Whether it be the conspiracies around 9/11, whether it be the conspiracies of Epstein, whether it be the conspiracies of QAnon, always dig deep enough and you will find the Jews at the heart. We have to wake up to the danger. We have to act against the danger. We have been blessed with a democracy in this country, the likes of which the world truly has not known, with protections and freedoms that we have never experienced. And we are a decade or two away from those being gone forever. And we are the only ones who can stop it. If you think someone else will, why? They're all busy chasing the protections for themselves. This country is blessed, and this country is beautiful, and it is our responsibility to keep it that way. And that means we need to do better than our ancestors. They didn't wake up until it was too late to save the first temple, or the second temple, or the Jews of Israel from Bar Kokhba, or all of the other disasters. We have the benefit of their suffering to know what is happening and to know what we must do. Do it. Shabbat Shalom.